Birth, ancestry, and early years of the Foundress. Madras, the third largest city in the Indian subcontinent, where the foundress of St. Teresa's convent first saw the light of day, has a glorious history of its own, both political and cultural. Its original name, Chennapattanam, is said to have been changed later to Madra de Dio by the Portuguese settlers in honor of the Mother of God, to whom the Portuguese were gently devoted. The word Madras is a corruption of Madra de Dio. Of all the cities of this subcontinent, Madras seemed to have been singularly blessed. It has the unique privilege of receiving the gospel message and the knowledge of Christ in apostolic times. A strong tradition ascribes to St. Thomas, the apostle of Jesus Christ, the work of evangelizing this part of India. Mylapore, originally Mailapur, the city of peacocks, is said to have been the scene of the apostles' fruitful labors in South India, and according to local Indian tradition, the apostle, after having labored zealously to preach Christ at Mylapore, received the palm of martyrdom in the year 68 AD at St. Thomas Mount, and his mortal remains were interred at Old Mylapore. On the site where the apostle was buried, a church was built, which was named Betuma, that is, the house or church or town of St. Thomas. It is this church that the ambassadors of Alfred the Great, King of England, are supposed to have visited in AD 853 in fulfillment of a promise the great and devout monarch had made. Wide article by a Bombay civil servant, reproduced in the Catholic Register of 25th May 1895. The present cathedral in Gothic style was erected on the ruins of the ancient church. Besides this imposing Santham Cathedral, which is one of the landmarks of the city of Madras, there is ample evidence in support of the apostolic tradition. Several places and institutions in and around Mylapore are named after the saint. There is even a post office, Santham P.O., that bears his name. In the wake of the apostle came Christian missionaries of all nationalities and denominations. Missionaries belonging to several religious orders arrived one after another to preach the doctrine of Christ, to establish seminaries and houses of formation for priests and religious, to found schools, orphanages, homes for the aged and destitute, hospitals and dispensaries. Soon, women religious too followed. The Sisters of the Society of the Presentation of the BV Mary, Daughters of Mary, Help of Christians, and the Little Sisters of the Poor. Several indigenous congregations too sprang up to take over the education of girls, to conduct orphanages and other works of mercy, so that In less than a century, Madras witnessed a network of these educational and benevolent institutions. By the end of the 19th century, Madras, notwithstanding its predominantly non Christian population, presented the appearance of a Catholic city. One has only to enter this town in the early hours of the morning to be impressed, nay thrilled, to hear the bells of numerous churches chiming almost simultaneously to summon the people of God for common worship. Mother Teresa of St. Rose of Lima, as the foundress will henceforth be called, was therefore most fortunate in being born in a milieu thoroughly Catholic. She was also fortunate in her parents, Peter and Mary de Lima, who were devout Catholics, the former a direct descendant of Portuguese ancestors. Portuguese influence was strong in the Indian subcontinent in the 16th century, not only in the political but also in the religious sphere. Akbar the Great is said to have invited Jesuits to reside at the Mughal court, attracted by their learning. In South India, stationed at Mylapore, was Portuguese militia in the service of the King of Portugal. There was in the same place a large settlement of Portuguese nationals, many of whom were of noble descent. When Saint Francis Xavier came to India, he visited Mylapore and spent 4 months there, from May to the beginning of September 1545. He not only made many conversions among the non-Christians, but also ministered to the spiritual needs of about 100 Portuguese families. A document of 1535 has been traced, which states that these Portuguese, unable to return home, wrote to His Majesty King John III for permission to marry the natives of the place. The children born of this union went by the name of Luso Indians. In the 17th century, the Portuguese, dissatisfied with the captain of the Portuguese militia at Mylapore, left the place and settled at what was then known as Blacktown, the present Georgetown. When the East India Company established itself in Madras in 1640 to 1641, these Portuguese found protection under the British and were enlisted in their service. The records of Fort St. George mention the names of 2 ancestors of Peter de Lima, Manuel Brendan and Antonio Pallia de Lima. The latter was one among the 260 Portuguese gentlemen who were summoned by the British to receive arms and assigned as officers to military posts under the garrison of Fort St. George. Antonio Pallia de Lima was posted at the bridge gate with 20 men under him. Peter Elias de Lima was therefore a direct descendant of these 2 Portuguese gentlemen. The register of baptisms preserved at St. Mary's Co-Cathedral of the Archdiocese of Madras, Mylapore, gives the following details relating to the birth, baptism, and family of Miss Mary Grace de Lima, his eldest daughter. Extract from the baptism register kept at St. Mary's Co-Cathedral, Georgetown, Madras 1. Born on 29 January 1858. Baptized on 31st January 1858. Name given in baptism: Mary Grace. Surname: de Lima. Father's name: Peter de Lima. Mother's name: Mary de Lima. Parents' abode: Parchery in Old Blacktown, now Georgetown. Father's profession: schoolmaster. Name of sponsors: Michael de Lima and Jane Marie Mothesis. Minister of Baptism: Reverend Father C. Murphy. Mr. de Lima is said to have been held in great esteem in his parish for his piety and integrity. He had the misfortune of losing his wife Mary when Grace was still very young. Left thus without a mother's care at a tender age, she found in her father the love of both father and mother. Deeply solicitous to impart to his eldest daughter the best Catholic education, Mr. de Lima looked out for a school where she would receive the best that Madras could offer. The education of girls in its initial stage was at that time in the hands of the nuns of the Society of the Presentation of the B.V. Mary. Their first foundation was made in 1842 at North Blacktown. This school, the first one established in South India by the daughters of Nano Nagel, imparted education including in its curriculum reading, writing, mathematics, science, English grammar, history, geography, French, plain and fancy needlework, embroidery, painting, vocal and instrumental music. The pupils were prepared for all the government examinations, including matriculation and women's higher grade examinations. As soon as Grace reached the school-going age, her father entrusted her to the care of the Presentation Sisters at Mecklin Street, Georgetown, not far from her home. Here, she completed her studies under the vigilant eye of the Superioress, Mother Bernadette, whose memory was long held in the veneration by the people of Madras city. Grace was therefore fortunate enough to receive her fine education and excellent training that fitted her for the apostolate Providence had destined for her. Not much information is available about Grace as a pupil of the Presentation nuns, a fire having destroyed all the records of the convent preserved in their archives at St. Ursula's. But she is said to have excelled in her studies as also in her conduct, and made rapid progress during her scholastic years. She passed the matriculation examination with distinction, taking for her subjects English, mathematics, history, geography, needle, and fancy work, as well as music, both vocal and instrumental, for which she had a special talent. Grace had an attractive personality. Tall of stature, 5 feet 6 inches, her oval-shaped, olive-complexioned face, her attractive eyes, and engaging smile, the grace and dignity with which she carried herself made her a general favorite in school. Her more than average intelligence, her modesty in success, won for her the love and esteem of her teachers. Her life at school was a happy one, but her girlhood affections were centered on her beloved father, who was her hero. Mr. de Lima married a second time, and by Catherine he had 2 daughters and a son. These later doted on their elder sister, and she in turn lavished her affection on them and did all in her power to create in the family an atmosphere of love and union. Life at home, therefore, fully satisfied her heart's desires. She seems to have been greatly attached to her father because, on completing her studies, she joined the staff of St. Saviour's Free School, where her father was the headmaster. Thus, she remained close to him and the family. The Irish nuns of the Presentation convents, it is said, did not at that time encourage indigenous vocations. As a matter of fact, they never admitted to their communities any of their pupils of Indian nationality, however brilliant they might be. But for this policy on the part of the nuns, Grace, who was always religiously inclined, might in all probability have sought and gained admission to the convent where she had received her excellent education and training. But God had His own designs on His child, designs which no human policy can thwart. He had received her for a special mission far from her paternal home. In 1879, Grace left Madras for Alleppey on the Malabar coast. This event was to be a decisive one for her whole future life.